Good morning. Welcome. Happy Monday and welcome to the world of international tariffs and what's going to happen in automotive. I'm running a survey right now on LinkedIn. Feel free to vote on what do you think will happen. New car price increase, used car prices increase, inventory, shipping, parts prices. But let's start with a quick video and welcome. Here we go.
Hi, Terrence and Sylvia. Well, if your car needs fixing, get it done now. Experts say car tariffs could bring up repair costs in a few weeks. One repair shop owner says his vendors are already on alert.
A couple vendors that are jumping the gun, getting ahead of the game on changing prices. The rest of them are kind of just making us be aware. Hey, this may change, it may not. And then some of them are going, hey, get your parts from here because they're sourced in the U.S.
According to the Anderson Economic Group research firm, there really isn't an American car that's made from 100% American parts. Most car parts come from Canada and Mexico. The U.S. imported about $14 billion worth of auto parts from Canada and $67 billion from Mexico last year. President Trump delayed 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. That delay ends April 2nd. If those tariffs go into effect, they'll drive up costs for cars and auto parts. Researchers saying people could see price increases on cars of $4,000 to $12,000. Some dealerships might adjust their pricing right away. Others may take a little longer. But how much more you spend depends on the type of vehicle, engine, and where its parts come from. But you can make some moves to save money.
The first rule is if you find a car with exactly the equipment you want, the model you want on a dealership lot, don't wait. Buy it now. Second rule is you got a late model car that's in good repair or a used car, better take care of that vehicle.
And potential car tariffs could also cause your car insurance rate to go up about 8% this year. That's according to Insurify. Experts add there's still a lot we don't know about these tariffs, including if they go into effect, how long they would stay in place. In Denver, Kennedy Hayes, Fox 72 Chicago.
I thought that was really interesting on the insurance side because obviously parts go up, fixing cars go up, insurance costs go up. So that was also not expected. I wasn't sure what to think there, but here we go.
Life is about connection. Having a support system to lean on. And roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
One of the really nice things about Larry, one of the reasons that we brought him to our dealership is he's still very much aligned with our core values and with our brand, which is thoughtful and professional service. And because that alignment really worked out well, because he was so committed to the success of others, we really knew that he was the right person to spend time with our sales team, with our managers and each sales consultant. And we're just really thrilled to have a partnership with him. And so we thank him.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged? Is it remote? For your next adventure, trust MotoClose for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Disclose Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Disclose DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub2025 to get special pricing, including waive setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Car dealers often underestimate the power of social media. Are you wondering why my face is plastered in your newsfeed? Are you a GM, dealer principal, or a manager at a car dealership wondering why you see me all the time? on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all over social media. Well, that didn't happen by chance. I target car dealers that are in-market shoppers for social media services, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for you so that you target in-market shoppers for your brand of customers that purchase your vehicles. During my Viato days, helping car dealers appraise and price cars, everyone was asking me, what do I do on social media? What do I do with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? And this was back in 2016. So here we are 10 years later. I started a company, became an entrepreneur, and now I help car dealers. They either outsource their social media needs to us, or we have a training and education center where we can teach all of your employees how to do social media in-house. 90% of consumers actually follow a business on Instagram. The average adult sits on TikTok for 2 hours a day in the rabbit hole. To learn more information about it or to get a demo from one of my sales associates, click the link below. We would absolutely love to help you.
And special thank you to our sponsors. And we have Brandy on the show today. So Brandy is the owner of Disclose. So if you are interested in the future of DMSs for all your motorized assets, you can definitely help there. And we have the former answer man at Google, the one and only Matthew Grodin, on to talk about, I think, a fired up topic right now, being that we're looking like tariffs are happening. So Matthew, you were on first. Maybe you can talk a little bit about you and what you're doing these days, but also what do you think the impact of tariffs will be on new and used cars, and your expert opinion?
In my expert opinion,
it
sucks. It's kind of bad. But yeah, what am I doing these days? I am teaching at Georgian College still. I am doing a variety of different consulting pieces, some with OEMs, some with auto groups, some with individual dealers, and then I'm still maintaining a lot of my regular kind of speaking gigs. So I'm still kind of out there at events across the country here in Canada and getting the word out about what's going on in automotive. It is, you hear and you see in the news, no one has a really good answer because it's almost impossible to predict exactly what Donald Trump is going to do. Like it's almost, you cannot exactly predict what he's going to do. He is drunk on the idea of putting tariffs in place, like completely consumed by the idea. And I don't think he has people around him who are telling him this might be a bad idea. Like there are definitely economists out there that are saying this is a bad idea, but no one, I don't think, with any kind of closeness or credibility close to him is saying, this is going to be bad. Very bad for the automotive industry, bad for the consumer in general. Like we saw in that clip, it's going to make everything more expensive. And the weird thing about this, right, even if we if we step out of automotive and we just talk about steel and aluminum, he tried that before. This isn't new. And, after a series of months, and I've made this comment in social media that basically, tariffs on steel and aluminum, they will make the can of beer you buy and drink on the weekend more expensive. They will make the refrigerator you bought to keep that beer cold more expensive, and the truck you drove to the liquor store in the first place more expensive. So there's some absurdity there. I don't know how, on one side, we don't exactly know what he wants. There's some sort of tangential sense of, or at least it was when the whole conversation came out, that this was about border security. Doesn't seem like it's about border security anymore. The phase 2 or phase 3 or ongoing tariff conversations seem to be more about bringing jobs back to America. No one knows how that's going to work if it destroys the companies that would otherwise be employing people because trucks are $12,000 more expensive. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And so I don't know who he gets his advice from. I don't know who's doing the math on this in the US government. And it looks like, it makes vehicles more expensive. It makes parts more expensive. It specifically hurts GM and Ford more than anyone else. There are other, yes, Stellantis will feel it a bit as well. They do a lot of truck manufacturing in Mexico. Tesla will feel it a little bit. They import some parts from Mexico and China. So it's really unclear how this translates into driving and creating jobs in America in a time frame that doesn't cause those companies who are impacted by the tariffs to suffer more in a place where they can't afford to hire more people. Like, it's very, very confusing. And further to that, there's a bit of a, yes, bring your plants back to the States. We can build all of the vehicles we need in the United States. And there seems to be no understanding that like a single manufacturing plant for an OEM costs $4 to $5 billion and takes 4 to 5 years to build, right? That basically, if that were to actually happen, none of it would materialize in a meaningful way until after Trump's term was over. So I don't get it. Like, I don't understand how the math works. It doesn't, as far as based on my calculations, if I had like one of those little punch key, printer, yeah, add or even
Abacus
an
machine?
abacus would be fine. I don't know how the math works. It doesn't.
Well, it's funny. I've been talking to a lot of dealers about this, shockingly. And some of them said, A, you're going to have increase in new car prices, so they're going to order less new cars because they're worried about that. B, in the Canadian market, you're going to see a decline in the price of used cars because they're not going to be exporting them because they'll be too expensive. So what that means in the U.S. is you'll have a shortage of used cars and an increase in new car prices. So it's going to be interesting to see how that looks, but more importantly, importantly,
I mean, we're already suffering on the used car front. We still have a bit of a COVID hangover on the used car front, right? So there's just not enough of them. People will not be able to afford new cars. They're going to start selling used cars. We're going to run out of used car inventory, and then what do people do? I don't know. So
yeah, very interesting. Brandy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree completely, Matthew. And the other side to this also is we're talking about how it's going to affect these companies, but it's already affecting the uncertainty and the concern from the consumer. We still need them to buy things. So when there's the uncertainty in the first place, that also will absolutely overtake anything that's coming right now. The other side also is that I've read that like a lot of auto companies are already pre-shipping. So these 30 days that we have this grace period, they started mass shipping from Europe to US year over year. They saw a 22% increase within this last 30 days. And from Japan to US, it was 14% increase of vehicles being shipped. That's going to include parts, etc. So yeah, such a behind the ball on everything. I also feel like what is the promise? That's one thing I don't think I found is what is the promise of where these tariffs are actually going to go to? Who do they go to? What are they offsetting? Where, who actually benefits from the tariffs themselves? That's where I'm also a little bit lost.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Mexico as a market, and when you saw the video earlier, I think it's $66 billion trade surplus in Mexico versus Canada. I think it was about 19 off the top of my head. You can check out the video at the beginning if you want those data. Or you can look online. When you look at it and say, okay, if you've got that much of an import from Mexico as a market to the US, even to Matthew's point, if you were to build a plant, could you really build $66 billion worth of cars within a couple months or even a couple years? Like, to me, that's a massive change in supply. But also, if you had a car that was built, some parts were some from China, some from Mexico, some from the US, if it's a unified thing, like, how do you do that? Now, I think what you're going to see is limited availability. So the gentleman on the video did say, hey, if you see a car you want to buy, you should buy it right now. And I thought that was interesting because it's obviously an opportunity for dealers who say, hey, I'm worried about the summer selling season as we get close to that. Spring is in here already. You want to obviously pre-sell as much as you can because you may not have vehicles. So summer may be an oddity this year just because of lack of availability. But the other thing that was really interesting was insurance cost increases. Because if you have parts go up, obviously insurance cost goes up. So I thought that was really interesting. So where do you think the arbitrage opportunity or the win here is for brands like, for example, BYD, VinFast, Polestar, and others who technically don't have a big market share but may or may not be as impacted? I mean, what do you think?
VinFast is an interesting one, right? Because it's one of the countries no one has turned their attention to. Vietnam, right? No one has turned their attention to Vietnam and said, okay, we need to increase tariffs there. So, it's peculiar because if you had asked me a month ago, like, what advantage does VinFast have in the North American market, I wouldn't have been able to immediately find one. But this might be one. Like, this might create an opportunity, assuming they can get all the weird beeping and software issues sorted out in the interior of the car. That there is an opportunity. I mean, what it illustrates, right, is that there are other places where vehicles get made, and that there are ways that trade could be offset, right? There isn't a world where, say, if we look at Canada exclusively, where cars or vehicles, trucks, whatever, won't get here, right? It's just that the vehicle mix might change. It's just, and how long does that take to become noticeable? I think the strange thing again is like what will suffer sooner rather than later is North American manufacturing, and that's apparently what he's trying to solve for. But again, there doesn't seem to be a solution there. And you hear, and I've had those conversations with dealers as well, Ian, where you're like, okay, they've been on these OEM calls in the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're learning, what vehicles are predominantly sourced from which countries.
Yeah.
So they're less likely to be impacted. And so there is a bit of a mad dash to pull in inventory from certain places. So they've got those cars for a number of days, weeks, or months. And then they know supply of other models, other nameplates are going to be less affected in the current set of tariffs. It's very strange, right? And what it creates, I think, longer term is a rewriting of trade routes. It just creates a universe where, Canada will be looking for other places to move parts to and from, or vehicles to and from, and believes, or is starting to believe, we cannot rely on the United States to be the trade partner it's been in the past.
And I'm also thinking about imported vehicles, especially classic vehicles, but also when you look at vehicles, let's just say Japan imports. I know Canada does import some vehicles from Japan that are older inventory. I mean, there may be an opportunity there as well, or and maybe even, doing repairs of vehicles that are in market, as they stated in the video, maybe even older classic vehicles that maybe, hey, I can't get you that new vehicle, but we have these ones. I think there's going to be definitely some interesting stuff going on there. But from an industry that employs probably 3 out of every 10 people in North America in one way or another, be it transportation, be it oil and gas stuff, be it parts, accessories, be it body shops, I think that the impact of this is going to be huge. But more importantly, the bigger question is, if you're a dealer, how do you get ahead of that? Like, how do you look at, okay, I want to stock for 30 days or 90 days. How do I get ahead of that 6 months in? I think that's going to be the big issue, especially with the cost of money these days. What do you think, Brandy?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more dealers turn to their OEM partners, and sadly, we're also going to see a lot more OEMs look for a bailout. And so maybe that's actually where it'll actually trickle out to, is that those original tariffs charged will go that way. I also feel like, working with your OEM is going to be a big part too. Trusting what they outsource, they're going to do a lot of research, and if you can rely on those bodies to look for other solutions for companies like us, we're also, it is nothing but opportunity. We're a very inexpensive solution. And so allow it, this is where dealers don't look to fix anything until it's broken. And right now things are broken. And so you'll see I feel like you'll see a lot more openness to listening to other solutions already, because of the scarcity. I go into stores who probably wouldn't normally talk to me, that are looking for anything just because we're in this stage, right? They're open to change because of the stage that we're in. And for companies like us, there's nothing but opportunity. I also feel like, we talk about 14 billion parts coming from Canada, 67 million. We can look to give to other countries all we can, but we don't even think about the effect that that's going to charge. 14 billion in parts that we are no longer going, this is, I guess I just have such a hard time understanding who's winning in all this. I do get, like you said, that the real purpose of tariffs is to bring things domestic. But like you said, if you haven't got the infrastructure there in the first place, how is that even
doesn't happen.
expected?
Yeah.
Well, you got to look into history. I mean, the last time in history, recent history, that a trade war of this scale was done was over 100 years ago. It did not work out well. And now we have not only tariffs against Canada and Mexico, we have tariffs globally. So we have countries now saying, okay, I'm not going to buy anything from the US. So it's going to be interesting to see who blinks first. I mean, I think that's the big issue. I mean, I was watching a video this morning about supermarkets where they're seeing drops in sales of US products of 6 to 8%. And the supermarkets are like, we can't, even when we discount them, people don't want them. So I'm sitting there going, that's interesting. But more importantly, when you look at impact globally, because the market today, 100 years from that point, is much more integrated. So could you really see taking out pieces of that tower of dominoes and expecting it to hold? I just don't see how that can work. And the side effect is basically increase of pricing, and nobody wants more inflation. So I'm curious as to if I'm a dealer or if I'm an OEM, and we were talking about Nissan a little bit before the call because they're looking for a lifeline. I think that this means that OEMs are going to have to look at joint ventures to say, hey, they don't like us, we're German. They don't like us, we're Chinese. They don't like us, we're Japanese. They don't like us, we're American, whatever. We're building American products. They're going to diversify their client base that they're building stuff for. But more importantly, you're going to see unification of big brands saying, okay, we've got to change where we're building cars and we got to change where we're selling them. And that may mean a change in sell volume. You have a comment, Brad?
Yeah, big brands and big dealers.
Yeah.
You're going to also see a lot of these dealers start to, time of sale. These mergers and acquisition companies are actually, I feel, also premeditating and getting ready for that next big wave as well. A lot of manufacturers put, imposed dealers to build certain facilities, etc. So you'll see that on such a ripple effect, right? All the way down the line.
Yeah, I mean that $25 million dealership that I was going to build this year, maybe I'll put that off for a little bit, right? Matt,
I mean, it's halfway through.
Yeah.
Awkward. There is listen, what do you tell a dealer? I think, Brandy, I think you're right. I think the lean into the OEM, or at least stay on top of whatever the OEM is communicating, because that'll become crucial information in terms of understanding what floor plan is going to look like 6 months from now. The other thing is, take a page from what you might have done during COVID, like stay nimble, because there are going to be times when, yes, okay, you've got an influx of used or new inventory coming in, right? And you need to pivot, you need to stop and pivot hard to be like, okay, our objective this month, different than last month, is we're going to go hard to the net on, new or used or service or F&I. Like that, the opportunity at a dealership is really to stay nimble, because I think in Canada, if we learned anything from COVID, is that even when things are weird, even when dealerships are closed, people still need cars. And so there is still a demand that needs to be met. It's just as it get met a little differently than it has in the past. The other, and you kind of quipped about this, the other opportunity, and there's been some writing about this around the what if scenario, like the what if and how long do we take to get there? But like, what does it take, or what happens if Canadian manufacturing disappears? And what does that impact on the 5 OEMs who manufacture here and have benefits from the, cheaper Canadian dollar and skilled workforce? What does that mean? And what do we do in response? And so maybe that gets split a little, and that maybe it's still okay for, Japanese brands to continue to manufacture here, because maybe they can export those vehicles to other parts of the world. Probably not the solution for GM and Stellantis. That probably doesn't go very well based on how things look today. But then, is there opportunity to invite the Germans the Koreans, the Chinese in. And if nothing else, the Chinese have the capital to do it. And they have the expansionist vision to do it right now. If we were to go that route, if we were going to say invite BYD in and say, okay, here is a plant. It used to be occupied by this OEM, but now maybe you want to build the Seal here, or maybe you want to build one of your other sub brands here. We would just have to put some other tight controls around that, around quota, around ensuring, the employment of Canadians. There would be a lot of criteria that would need to be put in place to make that comfortable for Canada. And China's probably willing to sign that deal. Like, they'd be likely willing to do that. So there are options. They're just strange. It is again a rewriting of the industry. It's a rewriting of trade deals. It's a rewriting of relationships. And even last year there was some talk on both the Ford and the GM camp that they were open to partnering. They were, in the context of that conversation, they were talking about EVs. They were talking about EV and EV technology. But I wonder if we get to a place where, Jim Farley and Mary Barra are like, the only way we really survive here in an isolationist United States is if we really work together. The stock structure of Ford might not prevent, or may prevent a complete joint venture. So it would still probably take the nature of some sort of partnership or technology sharing. But it's going to become a very different landscape, I think, in the next 12 months. And as I said at the beginning of the recording, very difficult to predict at this point how it's all going to pan out.
Well, you look at what happened in Australia when Holman closed. I think it was Holman. I'm not sure. There was a GM division there that was making cars. They closed that. BYD has already taken over about 20% of the market. Mexico is already selling BYD products at scale. They've obviously got the capacity to switch production. The bigger question becomes, can the United States as a country survive with just domestic manufacture? So if you eliminate China as a market, or you make it difficult for China to sell vehicles to the United States or parts, does that enable them to be able to continue, or do they have no choice but to sell those cars? So we'll see what happens, but I think there's definitely gathering forces. And I think, to your point, Matthew, if you don't have unification at scale, being that BYD is already gobbling up that whole market in China and Europe and other places, I think it's really about numbers of cars that you can sell. And unfortunately for the United States, not to beat them up, is their cost to build cars is very high. So even if you move the production back, which let's say you could do that in 3 years, can you really afford to build cars there at scale? Without Canada and Mexico, are those cars even affordable to sell in that market? That's the big question.
I don't think they are. I think, they can build them. They won't be able to sell them.
Yeah.
There was a reason that all of that was sourced out in the first place.
Well, you're already
If they could
seeing
have in the
default.
first place, they absolutely would have.
You're already seeing an increased default on cars based on COVID over MSRP pricing in the US and elsewhere, but especially in the US. So when you look at scale of manufacture and you look at 40% being China, and they're losing market share in that market, huge. Even Buick, which is one of the biggest brands from the US in that market. Tesla's getting their ass handed to them, as are a number of other brands, including Volkswagen, I believe. But I saw this maybe 18 months ago that I thought you were going to see mergers. It was just a question of when. And I think when you look at the fact that Europe and other countries are saying, yeah, okay, we'll just do a new trade zone. I don't know if they have the wherewithal to actually get that done. But if it does happen, it could be a game changer. The European Union might actually be have a power player in that side, just because of they still buy cars and other things, right?
I like to remind people that we have two borders with Europe. We have two.
Yeah.
we have both a border with Denmark and a border with France. Sure, they're islands just off the coast, but yeah. There's kind of a hilarious reality of we lots of talk of could Canada become part of the EU? That's not likely. There's a bunch of reasons why that's not likely. But again, could there be a stronger partnership between Canada and the EU? Could there'd be an entire like Northern Oceanic trade bloc kind of from China to Korea to Canada to Europe. There most certainly could. So,
And you're also seeing
As long as
trade
we can
winds.
get out of our own way.
right? As long as we can get out of our own way, that is 100% true.
You're also seeing growth in Argentina that is unprecedented. So I think South America is also a market that, you know, could easily not only unify, but also become much more integrated. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting times. But if you had to advise dealers or the OEM to say, hey, where should you start? So you don't get your ass handed to you. I mean, I know a lot of dealers are selling out. I mean, Auto Canada just sold their whole U.S. division, but how would you recommend they I guess meander through this minefield? What do you think?
Who wants to take that first? Meander through the minefield. Well, and I think it is this, stay nimble, right? I think it is rereading the room regularly, right? And I think that that's not necessarily a way, again, during COVID, yes, but not a way that every dealership operates, but they're going to have to rewrite what we're going to do this month every month. They're going to have to recast the die based on, what inventory is inbound, how sales were. So I think, it doesn't really, I said this years ago. I said, this is just a set of the things that I described at one point as the unpredictable elements. People still need cars. Yep. People still need the cars they have repaired, right? It's just, how do you manage those costs, both as a consumer and as a, either auto group or dealer principal, in a way that you can still maintain your business, you can still hold your staff. The challenge, I think, or what probably can't come soon enough for dealership is increased automation of things, right? The more that a dealership can manage its own costs, and again, this is exactly the playbook that dealers went through during COVID, then their ability to weather this storm, assuming it gets weird and ugly. There's still a world that calmer heads prevail and everything sorts itself out. There is a world where Trump goes, oh, wait a minute, we don't actually want to destroy Ford, GM, and Stellantis. We want them to stay in business. And so we'll make sure that there's automotive exceptions for all of this, and for parts, right? And but I would say for individual dealers, for dealers and auto groups, it's really stay nimble and replan every month based on what you got inbound, what you can get a hold of. Good operators doing that anyway, right? But I think the kind of sensitivity to being on top of that and rewriting your plan, perhaps having a plan would help as well. But having a plan and then rewriting that plan on a monthly basis is the only way you're going to stay on top of this and survive.
And I think retention, 100%. I think retention is the way you got to look at it. I mean, what got me thinking during this conversation was prepaid maintenance. If you're not selling prepaid maintenance at your dealership, you better figure that out, because maintenance is going to be a big profit center, but more importantly, it should change your conversation. We all know that things are about to get more expensive. You're going to be in your car longer. You're going to have additional costs. You probably want to insulate yourself from that. Even insurance companies could probably take from this, which is kind of interesting. But when you're looking at things like parts inventory, and you're looking at things like, are you touching your customer often enough? Are you providing services where maybe when they start to look at reduced costs, they're not going elsewhere for those services? So to me, that's a big thing. But more importantly, make sure you have cash in the bank. So if you have to pivot, you can invest in that. Because
and I was going to say, a lot of what the OEMs have done or are doing with Ford and GM, at least the word on the street is, they're, on one side, there's been a couple of articles with Ford where they're just stockpiling. They're stockpiling parts. They're keeping their current inventory of parts flush, and at the same time they're pulling back hard on the kind of national advertising side of things while they wait to figure out what's actually going on, right? So we actually know what kind of war are we fighting here, what do they actually need. And so there's some war chesting happening, there's some stockpiling happening, there's some advanced ordering happening, and they're trying as best they can without any kind of stability, without knowing what the future holds, to make sure they've got, that war chest, whether it's supply or dollars, in place so that they can weather the storm.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Warren Buffett, he's selling a lot of stock. He's got a lot of money in the bank right now, so that's got to echo. What do you think, Brandy? We're going to have Larry here in a sec. He's just joining, just so you know.
Yes. I'll get a breath in then before he joins, for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you know what? I totally agree, Matthew. It's stay lean right now. Where we were with COVID was so different though, because dealers leaned out the excess that really was unnecessary. A lot of AutoCAN stores since that last merger have done the same thing here locally with their stores. They're cleaning out excess that probably shouldn't have been there
In the first place.
Right? We were worried about AI taking our jobs. We shouldn't be worried about that anymore. You should just keep your job if you can. Definitely stay lean. I also feel like, we talk about the impact outside, but it's, when all of this happens, I find dealers start to look where they should have been looking all along. Like I had a talk with a guy that went from management to sales, and I just had this talk last week, and I see so many things that are underutilized by your OEM relationship, programs, benefits, etc. Like you say, make yourself that plan, but revisit that plan, re-familiarize yourself with everything that your OEM partner has. I actually said to this guy, I said, what's sadly underutilized is the grad program. You do not see enough grad programs coming. I also feel like, especially in Alberta, and it's for lack of understanding, but it's lack of leasing. Leasing is so low here in Alberta. Other provinces are capitalizing on things like that, which also would offset your inventory issues, etc. So things like that your manufacturer offers, making campaigns out of that when nobody else is. This gentleman, I had told him, I said, you should literally run a campaign on Facebook for the grad program and target that. Certain things that you could be doing to utilize what you already have in place and the inventory, etc., that's already in place. So besides the lean living, there is so much that we're not doing that we should have been doing all along. And in this downtime, this is the time to actually focus on that.
Well, yeah, manufacturers and dealers aren't advertising the fact that things are about to get more expensive. Like, why are you not driving traffic right now saying, hey, you want to save and maximize your savings on a new car? You should come in right freaking now. Like, I think
Like
Stellantis or someone, yeah.
Literally, your service and business office should be hitting the phone with anybody that did not buy a maintenance plan and hitting them up today. That's brilliant in its own.
Yeah.
Prepay your insurance for the year.
Exactly.
You can.
Larry, what do you think? Are you there?
Definitely agree with Brandy. But what's really interesting, Brandy, is you go into most of these dealerships and the salespeople don't even know what the programs are because nobody had a meeting with them and explained to them what they are and how easy they are to use and supported them. So, it's the old blind leading the blind. I spend a lot of time talking about, how sales and service never get together, but sales itself never gets together because there's always a gap between what's out there and what people really know about it and how to use it and how to utilize it. Brandy, I just left a dealership in Texas. Great people, made a lot of friends. And I said, guys, there's never a reason to ever be slow if you're not in a state. Now, California, you're not allowed. Virginia, Ohio, in the United States, you can't write a referral check or a bird dog check. But if you can write a $100 check to somebody, how could you ever be slow? Everybody wants that 100. Wealthy people drive their Bentleys across Canada to save 3 cents on a liter of gas. You see how I did the metric conversion?
There you go.
See, I'm becoming like a general societal.
Pseudo-Canadian.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I've even started to watch hockey. I don't know what that means, but at any rate, it's the old thing. The information as far as running lean. Listen, from day one in the business, it's been common knowledge to the people paying attention that you make more, you net more on a car you sell for $1,000 in 20 days than $3,000 in 90 days. It's the old thing where you can almost make the statement, look anywhere you want. It doesn't show the opportunities you miss. So you're 100% right. Now more than ever is the time. We've got a lot of opportunity. People are scared of tariffs, like Ian alluded to. But it's the old thing, you know, if you're smart, if you can adapt, there's always opportunity.
So what are you hearing from the dealers? Are they putting out promos to try and utilize that and leverage that to actually get more deals done now? Are they inventorying more vehicles in the hopes that maybe they'll have some inventory, prices go up? Like what are you hearing?
It depends on the dealer. The only reason I can't give you a blanket answer is it wouldn't be the truth. You've got dealers that are all over it and ahead of the curve, and you've got dealers that like don't even know what the curve is. You know, anybody with any sense would say, hey, we're making more money than we've ever made in our lives because we can point at a car and name any figure. Wouldn't that be a dynamite time to train people and retrench and go back to your roots? Because we're all the same. Nobody operates really well when you're under money pressure. That breaks up more marriages than everything else and makes business people crazy and makes salespeople ineffective because they start pressing. So again, there was dealers that have always been smart, and there's dealers that I think make money in spite of themselves, not because of how smart they are. You guys agree?
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I mean, when you're looking at it, going, you know, the tidal wave is coming. What are you doing to prepare? You would think there'd be at least a discussion. I'm not saying that they're going to put it into action.
Let me say this, and I'll shut up. The only reason Abe's my main man. The only reason that I disagree with what you just said is the tidal wave's always coming.
Yeah.
How about 2008 when the housing market melted down? How about cash for clunkers? How about when they called up dealers? I don't know what they did in Canada, Brandon, but in the United States, they said, you've done a fabulous job. We're putting you out of business. Why? Well, that's our new policy. Franchise laws. What the hell do they mean anymore when you can buy a Hyundai through Amazon? And they told all these dealers to build multi-million-dollar businesses, buildings, and now they're telling them maybe you don't need them. And now flip back to maybe you do. So there's always going to be a tidal wave. You know, it's why we shouldn't really be angry at people, because people we think are acting like jerks may be under so much pressure themselves. Everybody's going through something. Right. I mean, look at poor Brandy. She got subjected to a crazy American who jumped on a call late and won't shut up. You just never know.
Come on, I couldn't wait. I actually wanted to shut up just to hear you. Come on, it's been a bit. I love your take always.
You see that, my brother? I got good-looking women starved for affection and attention in Canada. I think I'm going to be crossing the damn border.
Just because I'm skinny doesn't mean I'm starved.
I hate it when everybody in the program is funnier than I am, but I'll hang it.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up with Amazon, because I hear they're getting into the used car game to compete with Carvana now. That's what I heard that last week.
Wait a minute, and Carvana see, I lied about shutting up. I'm a car salesman. What do you expect? But Carvana also bought a Chrysler dealer.
Yeah.
So you've got every possible permutation that never made any sense. Don't worry about Carvana. They're a used car place and they're going out of business anyway. Wrong on both counts. Everything we're doing comes back to the same thing. If you're adaptable, if you're likable, if you do what you're supposed to do, and you understand that we're here to make money, and the best way to do that is make your people raving lunatic fans, because nothing's stronger than word of mouth, you're fine. But I think we could have had the same conversation 30 years ago, and we probably could have had it with Henry Ford. I don't know if you guys know this, but Henry Ford raised his workers' salaries. And every conservative business person said, it's a disgrace. What are you doing? He said, I want for the people that work for me to be able to afford what they're building. Pretty smart. So again, he was ahead of the curve where other people dragged their feet. And to flip it, when Edison developed the first battery that you didn't have to crank, Henry Ford didn't want it. Take notes, Ian. There's going to be a quiz later.
Oh, okay. No worries. So I mean, I know we're all in the car business, and I know you know, Trump is the deal maker, supposedly, based on his books or whatever. What do you think these countries can do to make a better deal? I mean, I saw some pretty interesting stuff going on with Ireland, and then Conor McGregor made some comments that were off color, but whatever. You know, what do you think these countries can do to make a better deal and hopefully resolve this in a better way in the next 30 days? I mean, what do you think?
They need a calculator. They need a calculator, and they need to sit down and say, what do we get from trading with the United States? Right? Do we all agree that ROI is important to us, and it's
Yep.
important to dealers, and it's important to countries.
Yep.
If I do this, what will I get? What loss can I mitigate, and what's my top end? I listen. In case you guys don't know, I'm a Trump guy all the way. I'm still recovering from Joe Biden. But having said that, I think what he's doing is just bluffing people. We've already seen a few people that said absolutely not and get rid of, and they're coming around. They need to see if it's worth it. Okay, if a deal's worth it, think of the lengths we go to when you deal with clients, when you deal with customers. If it's not worth it, right? If somebody came to you, you're a car guy, on the last day of the month and said, this guy wants us to lose $1,500, and you went to the manager, and the manager said, well, wait a minute, we're one car away from getting a $20,000 bonus.
Yeah.
Do the deal. We're not 15 down, we're 18.5 to the plus.
Yeah.
So all the other countries have to do and measure and see. Because the edge Trump has, he's a businessman. Only businessmen should be able to run big countries. Because people that never signed a paycheck, only the back to endorse it, are useless. The other thing is he's nuts. So it's really hard to compete with a nutty guy, because where everybody else follows protocols, he just does whatever the hell he feels like it. And the other countries aren't used to that. They're used to us supporting NATO and all these other countries. But listen, look on the good side. Whoever you have now running your country is better than Trudeau. So you guys are going to be just fine.
Well, yeah. Plus, I mean, it's shocking that some of these politicians can't do basic math. Like I've seen some of this stuff on all sides, but especially on the left, where it's like, so you really don't want us to look at how we were badly spending money? I'm like, really? Like, how do you build that case? How do you make that make sense? And the thing that's funny, to your point, Larry, is it's really a conversation. If a car dealer said to a customer, oh, that number's too low, we're just not going to sell you anything. Like, if they stopped at that conversation and just admitted defeat, there would be no car business. And that's what's shocking to me, is you've got these countries rolling in, and they kind of just think that they're going to make a deal without having to do anything. And I think you got to come with at least some basic negotiation skill. Like, it just shocks me.
I know I keep saying I'm shutting up, but you guys got me thinking. Yeah. I'm dialing back into Brandy. When I jumped on, I'm sorry I was late, guys. I had a flight at Georgia to help the dealers out.
No worries.
Brandy, think about what you were talking about with the leaning and the rest of it. Think how badly dealers miscalculate the worth of a customer. I mean, every dealer, and I used to be a dealer, will tell you the same thing. It sucks. I'm losing business through service. Where's your tire display? Where's your oil change? Where's your person sweetly saying, oh, I'll get you right in. Oh, you need your stuff. 2 weeks, I'll see you. Screw you with 2 weeks. So if you don't understand the value of a customer in terms of what they bring, other people they recommend, how are you going to recognize? If the dealers don't recognize that, how can a salesperson recognize that when they live month to month?
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you're looking at it and you say, okay, salespeople in automotive are still pretty much commission-only people. They've got to figure out a way to win. And the dealer's in the same boat. If they're not moving any inventory, even if they can't buy more at that price, they're going to have to figure out a way to do it. And I think the same is true when you look at the complexity of this problem. You need to get people together in a room and go, okay, let's just work this out. Like, let's stop having this, attacks on both sides. I mean, it doesn't help anybody. I mean, that's what I think, where I think the politicians at scale are missing the boat. They're being invited to a conversation, but they don't want to go because it might not go in their favor. And I think that's just how touchy politicians are. But what do you think, Matthew?
Man, it's tricky. Both cases, China and Canada just went to the WTO for what's that worth just last week.
Yeah.
So who knows if that means anything in the current world order or not. My brain keeps going back, and it's because Trump is a quote unquote businessman, that this may not be decided by politicians, that a lot of how this shakes out will be conversations with Jim Farley, Mary Barra, Elon Musk, that especially when we think about it through that lens of automotive, that those CEOs need to plead their case, right? And they need to strike the deals with Trump for him to have confidence that something is happening that's going to bring jobs back to the United States. Again, I don't think that can happen at the timeline that he has offered, but I think this is not a problem that can be solved by the politicians, because the politicians are like, what's our recourse? Like, what do we do here? Outside of dealing with other people. I think this really has to go, and it's more of a statement of how the US is currently operating. The businesses are going to need to decide. The businesses are going to need to step up. They're going to have to lobby. They're going to have that conversation with the US federal government. So, in my opinion.
Interesting. Brandy?
Yeah.
What would you do? How would you negotiate this one? How would you negotiate this one? How would you make this work? It seems like we're up between a rock and a hard place, and time's running out. So, what if you were the one trying to make this happen? How would you do it?
Trying to make which part happen? The actual adjustment to the tariffs?
No, I mean, obviously it's
like, as we noticed in the opening clip, they're already increasing prices.
Yeah.
They're already preemptively preparing for what is coming. If it doesn't come, I wonder how that adjustment actually looks.
Right.
Yeah, it's too unpredictable, I think. I think the big message that I've also caught here especially is to be malleable, to be flexible, to actually be on top of what is happening so that you can react and proact rather than wait for the aftermath. Yeah, I think, sadly, I just don't think anybody's going to win. And when that is the case, yes, there's opportunity when this kind of stuff happens. Always, there's opportunity in all crisis. But I just think that the end result is that the consumer is going to be the one that pays. And I don't know what the right answer is. I really don't.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost out of time. We got time for a final thought from everybody. Larry, you want to start?
Sure. I think we'll see this thing happen pretty quickly, because while Trump may not have started out as a politician, he's a politician now. He's president, and he's going to want to make things move smoothly, and higher prices are not going to help. I think what will eventually happen is we'll see the tariffs kind of get equalized. At some point, people will say, well, we're charging the United States 40%. Maybe we can meet them in the middle and lower ours, and we'll be good, because look what we lose if we don't have it. So I'm an optimist, and I think everything will be just fine.
Fantastic. Matthew?
I don't know that everything will. I am also an optimist, but I don't know that everything is going to be just fine. I think this is really laying the groundwork for a rewriting of world order, right? This is laying a groundwork for a rewriting world order where new alliances are going to be forged, where new trade deals are going to get signed, and oddly, probably against his intention, the country that's going to be left out of the conversation is the United States. Like the country that's probably got the most to lose longer term is the United States. And you see that happening globally. And there is, I was listening to a different podcast last week, Scott Galloway, and he talked in a couple of the podcasts that he's in last week that China is basically sending their emissaries, their ambassadors around the world and saying things like, we know you don't like us. Like we know we're not the favorable partner, and we know why. However, what we do offer is stability and financing. We have stability in financing because we don't like chaos either. And with that message, if there's a winner in all this, it's probably the CCP. Like it's probably the CCP who ends up on top long term. And again, that could change very quickly. Larry's got a good point that things could move and change very quickly. And again, there is kind of an element of if cooler heads prevailed and a lot of the noise goes away and a lot of these tariffs go away, then what book are you holding up there again?
Ray Dalio, Changing World Order. Highly recommend. Spent a little bit of time researching this.
So, then, things could calm down, but I think the damage is already done. I think a lot of the damage is already done. And if nothing else, Trump has put the message out there that, the U.S. is not going to uphold their own trade agreements. They're not going to follow their own laws, let alone any other international laws. And that if countries want to figure this out, they have to figure it out on their own. Like, that is, I think, the message that governments around the world have received, is that there is no longer aid, there is no longer support. The United States isn't going to protect you. They're not going to fund you. They're not going to help you. You're on your own. And so in a world where countries are trying to figure that out, they're going to figure it out. And in that world, they leave the United States out of the equation.
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, I recommend reading the book, Ray Dalio, Changing World Order. He looked at regime change, and he looked at this within the last 400 or 500 years of world history, when you had a change from, say, this country to that country, and what happened. And it's really interesting this time, because he was predicting this, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, that it was going to happen in, say, that 24 to 48 month time frame. He was a little off, but I don't think by much. Because when you look at it, when you look at it and you look at the changing tides, and he talked about things like the British Empire and the Roman Empire and different things. But at the end of the day, when you have a tectonic plate shift, things happen. And about statistically, I think he was talking about, and you can read, he's way more statistical than I am, but I think he said in about half the cases, a war happens. The other half is just a shift in order, and we'll see what happens. But I agree that you are seeing, a bunch of forces at play. What that's going to mean is anyone's guess, but I think you will see potentially a change in dominance. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, Ian, we got to keep an eye on China, because their economy is much less stable than some people think it is.
Oh, 100%. When you look at China and India, to pick the two largest countries by population on the earth, and you look at the way they run those two countries, one is an authoritarian state, communist state, the other one is the largest democracy in the world. They both have their issues. But when you put Russia into the mix, which is clearly in the mix, what does that mean? I don't know. And the other thing that's very interesting from a global point of view, and we talked about earlier in the show, was South America. You're seeing a rising tide there, starting with Argentina. That makes it really interesting from North, South, and Central America, outside of Europe and Asia. Like, when you take those all out, you're just looking at this one landmass. But when you put all those countries together, Mexico, Canada, and Latin and Central America, the population is quite significant. So if we could get together as a group of countries, that would probably be a good idea. So I think what I see in this Trump move, and I know it's somewhat of a sales and negotiation move, I get it. We're better to fight the battle, to not fight each other, and to get together and fight the world power, versus argue over a piece of pie. Like, to me, that's a mistake.
Are we gonna have to call those countries in the Southern Hemisphere a different name? Because I'm pretty sure Trump at one point is going to say they can't call themselves South America anymore.
Oh, I guess, but I mean, if Argentina can turn it around, and Brazil is also very interesting. If those countries can turn it around, I think you do have a lot of population, right? So there's a big market there, but it's better to build bridges with people locally than to build bridges with people that you're already disagreeing with at scale and police it.
Larry, they may not want to be called America either, so I don't know if it's really a problem. It's probably a problem that solves itself.
Yeah, I think there was some comments.
Don't want to be called Americans. That's okay.
No, I just look at the numbers and I say, okay, if you're looking at 2 billion people versus the population of this big landmass that's connected, I mean, it's not 2 billion, but it's got to be a pretty big number. And I think that there's more than enough business for everybody if we all got together and made a deal, versus fighting each other when the Chinese play the long game. Like them or don't like them, they're a long game thinking country. And I think that's the challenge. Brandy, we got 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking it's literally is like poker. When there's 3 guys, when you're down to 3, right? You have no problem, especially if you're low hand, you have no problem, or short stack, watching 2 take each other out, or 1 take, 2. If you know that it's going to end up with just the 2 of you, you're good to just sit back and be quiet and let the fight happen. It truly is what China's done, is just let us fight amongst ourselves, and so that they can pick up the rewards. So if we can avoid that and keep it on the same continent, I'm with you 100%.
Well, thanks very much, everyone, for your input, and thanks, Larry, for your thoughts on the future of the world as we know it. And have yourself a great week. If you are going to have time on Friday, I'm going to be doing a show on video MPIs. I did a show with 4 technicians on Friday, which was quite interesting because you don't hear technicians talk about much that often. And one of the topics that came up was digital MPIs. They're throwing smartphones into technicians' heads, going, "Oh, shoot a video for the customer," with no training. So I thought it was a good opportunity to do a call on that. Anyway, have yourself a great week. Thanks for the participation, and all the best.
Thank you.